Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel Podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
You're listening to the Skift Podcast. Today we feature a special roundtable discussion on the news that India has or will soon replace China as the world's most populous nation. Skift founder and CEO Rafat Ali sits with Varsha Arora, a senior analyst for Skift Research, and Peden Bhutia, Skift's Asia editor, to talk about the many implications of India's population growth on inbound and outbound travel, how destinations have and will shift to accommodate Indian tourists, and what motivates the Indian traveler, including shopping, dining, and Bollywood hits. For more like this and the latest news in travel, visit skift.com. Enjoy the conversation.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Skift Podcast. I am Rafat Ali, the CEO and founder of Skift. We are going to discuss a very interesting topic that we've been highlighting recently, and a seminal moment that's happening in the world demographic switch, if you will, where India will cross China's population sometime is estimated in April this year. And having been a student of the world, if you will, my first surprise when I saw that stat was that this was many years in the future. And the reality, if you look back at the population prognostications, was this was supposed to be much further ahead. But China's population growth has fell off a cliff, and so this switch got pulled much earlier. So this is happening in 2023. It's a great media moment. We at Skift just presented our megatrends in January, and Seth Borko, who's our senior research analyst, put together a bunch of slides, and he and I talked about it at our megatrends event in New York City. We're going to link to that video. It's a short 20-minute video with the slides in this description for this podcast. And that basically teased why this is a seminal moment in terms of the demographic switch, and what is the long-term potential of Indian outbound traveler going all around the world. And it's important because also in terms of timing, the Chinese outbound traveler, China as a force, has been a giant force in the world of travel and tourism for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And that growth has happened. The whole industry had become dependent on the short haul and the long haul Chinese travelers. And obviously that got shut off with COVID, everything you know, which is it was shut for the last 3 years. And now the spigot is just opening up as China has suddenly made a switch from zero COVID to we don't care, do whatever you want to do type pivot that they've done. So, and remains to be seen what the habits of the Chinese outbound travelers, have they changed or not changed. If we look at evidence from other countries post-COVID, the reality is a lot of the habits are the same, even if they've happened. So anyway, we'll focus on India. I have two great guests. They happen to be my colleagues at Skift, Varsha Arora, who's the senior research analyst based out of Mumbai, and Peden Bhutia, who is our Asia editor based out of Chandigarh. And so they both cover different aspects of the travel industry and also have very deep knowledge about the Indian tourism sector, both inbound as well as outbound. So let me start with this, Varsha, with you. Obviously, the headline is that India will outpace China in terms of population. But the reality on GDP is still pretty stark today. So give a sense of what it is, and then what gives you hope that that gap shortens.
Okay. So let's start with some numbers. As you rightly said, the GDP of China is currently 5x of India. The spending power of an average Chinese is 5x of an average Indian. So that's a point to start with. Now, the point is we've been talking about how the population growth actually fueled outbound tourism in China, right? So there was a reason to it. It's not only population, it's not only the numbers which are good enough. So what happened in China and can the same be repeated in India is how we should frame this conversation. So the major reason it happened, the outbound tourism got fueled, is one is demographic dividend. So I'm not going to press on it a lot because we've already discussed it in our mega trends presentation. Um, so that was one major reason. Being working age population was higher in proportion in China, and that basically gave an impetus to the economic growth. The discretionary spends increased, and hence the numbers and the outbound expenditure increased. And along with that, in Asia, tourism was becoming a fad back then. Chinese population was becoming obsessed with spending on luxury goods and traveling international.
Right.
The internet penetration was increasing. So there were a lot of factors along with the population increase, which led to that outbound tourism growth. Now, the question is, can that be repeated for India? So if we look at the slides of the Megatrends presentation, yes, it seems yes, we can. But when we delve deeper, let's divide it into two. One is the factors which are favorable for India, and the second part is the challenges which India needs to, address to get that outbound tourism. So the factors which work in favor of India, one is obviously the demographic dividend. I mean, this is the window, like the opportunities right now for India, because the window opened back in 2005 and it's open till 2050. So the next 3 decades belong to India, as it seems, right? So theoretically, it is a golden period. Second favorable factor is the language. So India has much stronger English skills and has a much larger base of population which speaks English, which automatically makes it global. Now, the third point is, how has COVID helped India, right? Recovery in India was better than China. Seat capacity at present has already is 11.9% over 2019 levels.
And this you mean the airline seat capacity?
Yes, airline seat capacity. While China is still struggling to get onto the 2019 levels, right? VC investments in the 3 years of COVID period were 4x, while in China it was around 1.9x. So a big gap there as well. So these were the factors which actually worked for India. But now when we get into what we need to work on, what India needs to work on, is the socio-economic part of it. We are way, way, way behind China. So just as an example, I mean, the skilled labor, for that matter, which is very important, right? We're talking about demographic dividend. We are talking about the numbers which are going to go into the workforce, but we don't have jobs for them.
Right, and that creates disposable income that then they will spend in travel.
Exactly. So we need those jobs for them to earn money and spend on travel. So it's all connected back to economy and the socio-economic factors. So if we compare India and China, the skilled force in India is just 3%, while China is at 25% currently. Wow. So that's again a huge gap, right? Let's talk about literacy rate. India is at 60%, China is at 95%.
Right.
Let's talk about internet penetration, which is very important in today's era because COVID just revamped the entire industry, made it digitized. We're talking about 70% for China, while India is sitting back at 40% of internet penetration today. So, I mean, yes, these are general stats. These need not apply to the target population for the outbound expenditure.
Right, the people who have disposable income, relatively rich, have a desire to be global.
Yes, but we do, like, a lot of people have talked about the mass tourism bit. So when we talk mass tourism, we need to address these basic issues. And also when we talk about HNIs, which was a point made in the megatrends as well, we said that there is a slice of the Indian people who have crazy spending power. But if we compare the ultra wealthy, like the ultra HNIs, the numbers,
Right.
China is sitting at 70,000 people while India is at 7,000 people. So again, there is a big gap. So I mean, the entire idea is that there is a lot to be done. So just being at the right window of opportunity of demographic dividend does not help India. We need to have policies, we need to have jobs, we need to have the basic things solved for us to reach that level of discretionary spend that Chinese do.
Right.
And let's this just last one point here. If we talk about tourism, let's talk about basic infra with respect to air connectivity, for that matter.
Right.
So I mean, India lacks an intercontinental airline. With Jet going down, Air India solving its issues with merging with other airlines. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the airline industry. But the bigger issue to solve is that we do not have an intercontinental airline. So, I mean,
which is the hope that Air India now as a private company will become that. Under Tata will become that, but that's a multi-year journey.
Exactly. I mean, right now we're talking about 4 airlines coming together: Air India Express, Vistara, and AirAsia.
Right.
So 4 airlines coming together is actually a decade-long journey for them to set. So that's a big task in itself. But the point is that at present, all the international flights from India are actually routed via Dubai. Via the Middle East.
Right.
We do not have direct connectivity as yet. The seats which are scheduled from China, to and from China, the international seat capacity is actually 2.5x of India. So, I mean, that's again like a big infrastructural change that we need to address to actually make the most of these the mega trend of demographic
changes in it. Okay, so this is very, very sobering and very helpful, and obviously clearly points to the long-term challenges as well as potential, hopefully, as India as economic power internally, and social and economic changes that happen. Peden, obviously you cover Asia, which is a huge purview for you to cover for Skift. You wrote this mega trend for us as part of the 2023 Megatrends package on what happened to India's domestic tourism market, which is a fascinating change that has happened. So talk about what that change was, and then we're gonna dig a little deeper into it.
Correct. I guess, Rafat, India's domestic tourism has, of course, there are challenges in outbound travel, but domestic tourism has really come up, and domestic tourism is fueling the growth for, last year, Taj Hotels reported the best quarter ever in the history of Taj. And that was thanks to domestic tourism. And if we talk about domestic tourism, if you will see that we are increasingly moving from the larger cities, which we call here tier 1 cities, like Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, and moving more towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which are the smaller cities, which is where the traveling population is coming from. So if you look at, seasoned markets like Thailand and Dubai, you will see that Thailand and Dubai, they are doing a lot of these road shows and tourism trade shows in these smaller cities, because they too understand that they need to tap these markets now. I recently covered an airline that's coming up called Fly 91. Now, this airline is being helmed by the guy who was, helming Kingfisher at one point in time, Kingfisher Airlines, Vijay Mallya's.
Right.
So this airline is not, it's not going to be based in a Delhi, Bombay, or Calcutta, or Hyderabad, or Bangalore. It's going to be based in Goa. So that was a very interesting angle, because when I spoke to Manoj Chako is the guy, and I asked him, why Goa? Because he also talked about the potential of the smaller cities of India, and they've talked about the fact that demand for travel is coming from these smaller cities. In Make My Trip's latest earnings as well, they've talked about tapping the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities. You'll see that Oyo is also doing the same. Thomas Cook is doing the same.
Oyo's whole business is built on obviously smaller cities, right?
Correct. So you'll see that, every Indian company is now, I guess, we can say that the Delhi, Bombay markets are saturated. And even the government is now, there are around 60 airports in India, which is under the Udan scheme. Udan is the regional connectivity scheme that the government has launched.
Right.
And there are more airports coming up in India. So they are also trying to connect, So what I, earlier when I was talking to tourism boards, they used to tell me that, we see that the traffic is coming from Delhi, but that is because these people are flying from the smaller cities to Delhi or Bombay, which has the biggest international airport, and then flying out from there. So there is, I would like to be hopeful about the fact that there is great demand coming in. And of course, if there are facilities for international connectivity in these areas as well, then we will see a huge surge in international travel as well. And right now, there is plenty of room for growth because only about 7% of India's population, which is about around 95 million, less than 10 million people, own a passport. And this is according to the data from the Ministry of External Affairs.
Wow.
So with less than 10% of the Indian population owning a passport, and now, the government is trying to, bring in more people, and they've started something called the Passport Seva Kendras. So, and on an average earlier, it took about 21 days to get a passport. This was around 2015.
Right. Police to come to your house. I remember when I was a kid growing up, police used to come to your house to do checks and
yes.
You had to pay them money and just
now you get a passport within 2 days, and the police verification happens within a week. So within a week, you get your passport is ready. So the government is also trying to encourage people to travel, perhaps, because that's what they're doing by opening these passport seva kendras and fastening the whole process of passport issuance.
Right.
Hey, Skift listeners, hear about the latest trends in the travel industry with the Brand USA Talks Travel Podcast. Right now, listen to special live from IPW interviews featuring U.S. Travel's Jeff Freeman.
DMOs are at the heartbeat of U.S. travel.
Liz Bittner from Travel South.
A lot of key gateway markets are back.
LA Tourism's Adam Burke.
We all win when we all partner together.
Plus, Brand USA's Stacey Melman and Jackie Ennis with international travel trends and Chris Thompson's farewell finale. I'm Mark Lapidus. Join us for Brand USA Talks Travel on your favorite podcast platform.
Brand USA Talks Travel.
Peden, I want to just dig a little bit more into the domestic tourism part, which is one of the slides that Seth showed at the Megatrends, but also he's been talking about it for a few years, which is when the GDP crosses a certain point in a population, people's aspiration of experiences becomes a real thing, meaning they want to travel. In India, and for now, let's just talk about domestic, and then we'll talk about international outbound. What are the factors that are affecting now people being educated that not going to your grandmother's place is an option? Like, remember when we were kids growing up in India, for us holidays was going to grandmother or on the parent side or the father side or the mother side. That was holidays. That was travel. Industry calls it VFR. Obviously, there's no money leaking into the larger economy. Has that changed?
Yes, that has changed, because if you see now, Rafat, after during every holiday, so I think it's from today, that's the 19th of January, Indigo is adding 16 more flights. Starting from today till 26th January. And this is because of the 26th January, travel surge. They're
Republic
adding 16 more flights.
Right?
Yeah, the Republic Day. So every time there is something like this, there is a huge surge in demand. And there are these viral photographs of, these huge queues starting from a place in Himachal Pradesh called Parwano, reaching up to Shimla, which is a popular tourist destination. Of course, there is, if you see the pictures of, there is this new, there's this new construction called the Atal Tunnel, which now connects Lahore and Spiti in Himachal Pradesh. So that's an easy connect. Earlier, you had to go a long way off, and it was about, I don't clearly remember, I think it was about a 10 or a 12-hour drive. But now it's a 2.5-hour drive. So there have been traffic jams at these places. So people, yes, of course, people want to travel, and millennials and Gen Z, they want to travel more with friends. Earlier, it was about travel with the family. So when we traveled as a family, and then, of course, went to a relative's place, and it was about staying at a relative's place. So, whenever we wanted to go for a holiday, our parents would always look for a destination where we had some relative, because that was easier, right? I mean, like just staying at a relative's place. But now that's increasingly changing. People want to experience hotels. If you see the number of hotels coming up, if you see how brands like Accor and Marriott are investing in India, because they realize the demand, they know that there is great potential in the India market, and they realize that Indians are going more for experiential journeys rather than just, and sometimes it's just about going and staying at a hotel.
Right. Very interesting. Varsha, from your perspective, what are the positive signs on the domestic front? Obviously, infrastructure, as Peden mentioned, these airports coming up, and airports becoming a lot better all across. Well, airports in the first place coming up, and so from your perspective, what are you seeing on the domestic front, and what are you seeing changing in the domestic front, particularly during COVID?
Okay, so to start with the policy part of it, I think Peden already mentioned about the Udan scheme. Right. So from the airline perspective, that's where the airlines are actually investing, because the government is giving huge incentives on airport fee, landing charges, parking charges, etc. So that's one, strong point here, because it's not only the airlines aiming for the domestic tourists, it's also the government who's working in favor of them. So
right.
That's one point. Other than that, I think social media influence over the last 2-3 pandemic years has grown manifolds. Here in India now, a 5-year-old kid also knows what is Instagram, what is Facebook, which was clearly not the case when we were growing up. Right. So, the social media influence is second point, which is increasing and obviously working in favor of increasing the domestic tourism. Then I think the OTAs, so Make My Trip, for example, has become so huge in India, and the way they're marketing their products, you talk about package tours, or you talk about these Republic Day sales, etc. So, people are becoming more aware of what OTAs are. Okay, we can go for package tours. They provide tip-to-toe service, from booking intercity cabs to booking, obviously the hotel, airlines, everyone's doing, but they actually go into providing you last mile connectivity as well. So we don't technically need an Uber also now. Make My Trip is taking care of everything. So, the ease of it, the ease of booking tickets, the ease of just landing at the airport and just reaching your destination seamlessly is becoming a thing now, which used to be really bad when I was growing. For example, if you talk about the eastern part of the country, so if you talk about a state like Orissa, the basic requirements weren't there. You wouldn't get a cab when you got out of the airport, but now just land there, you have Uber, you have all the apps installed on your phone, and it's just becoming easy.
If the travel industry can solve seamless travel, we cover a lot about seamless travel or the connected trip. These are different terms that different companies use, and we cover it. If they can solve it in India, they pretty much solved it for anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
From that perspective. So I guess what you're saying is the aspiration is being created both as a result of the rise of the consumer economy. We can go as far as back as cable TV coming into India back in the 90s, and then internet coming in and creating this consumer an aspirational thing that first spread around buying things this has happened in Western societies or other developed societies as well previously. And now after, things becoming pretty common across a certain set of households in India, now the young particularly, when Chinese travelers first started traveling globally in some numbers, group travel was the big thing, which is, as you said, they went out for shopping, and shopping was just for Western goods, whether it was London, Dubai, closer to their home in different parts of Southeast Asia. And the Chinese market obviously has evolved just from the group travel. The cliches of a bus full of Chinese travelers was becoming less true before the pandemic. We'll see what happens now. In terms of the mass of tourists that are going out of India today, are we seeing similar behaviors, or are we seeing different behaviors? Any of you? Go ahead, Peden.
Yeah, I guess, one thing about Indian tourists is, they might want to experience foreign food, whenever they travel, they might want to experience the food for some time. But at the end of the day, they want Indian food. And you can see the number of restaurants in the smallest of places. Like, I was at a place in Vietnam. It was called Sapa. So there also I saw one Indian restaurant. This was in 2020. Mm-hmm. So I asked them that, do Indians come here? Then they said that, yeah, they do get some Indians. But, they've realized that Indians start looking for Indian food. I mean, like, they might have...
at some point in their journey. Right.
Yes, I think, and sometimes it's as early as, maybe the dinner. Maybe they've had lunch, breakfast and lunch, but they want their dinner. So if you see the number of... I was in Chiang Mai recently, and the number of Indian restaurants in Chiang Mai, in places where they have understood, where they've already got, Bangkok, you can see the number of Indian restaurants. And of course, there are many countries that cater to Indian weddings as well.
Right. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Yes.
Yeah. Hotels in Macau and all, they have, there are some hotels in Macau where they even give you, the package includes a pandit as well for
pandit
the wedding.
Is the priest that does the wedding.
Priest who officiates the wedding, right. The Hindu religion. Yeah. So, if you see that, there are countries that are going out of the way to cater to Indian tourists because they realize, and of course, earlier when I used to be part of media familiarization trips, every trip was accompanied by a visit to an outlet village because they know that Indians are big on shopping. Mm-hmm. So, I think destinations have understood what Indian customers want, and they're trying to cater to that.
Varsha, on the food front, so this is, again, a sort of an inside joke among Indians, which is that, when we travel, we always just eat Indian food. Obviously, that has changed because in India, especially in the last 10, 15, 20 years, the number of choices, one, the restaurant scene has boomed in different cities in different ways. Delivery has boomed. That obviously is a giant market. That's a whole different thing. We can go down. So Indians' palate has expanded. Again, this is in keeping with aspiration that comes into obviously also the joke is that we Indianize every food. So Thai food will be very different in India, or Chinese food will be very different in India than would be outside. But that's again a different topic. So I guess as you get exposure to all these cultures is what makes you curious. One of the things that I've noticed, and let's dive a little bit into this wedding and the honeymoon market, because when my younger brother got married, he went to honeymoon. This was in 2018. He went to Malaysia, and which is a thing that when we were growing up, we would never have considered. But the max would have gone to like Shimla or Goa, etc. So I think so talk about this change in aspiration for the younger generation, starting with obviously college as well, but also honeymoon, wedding, and honeymoon as well.
Yeah. So, as we know, during the pandemic as well, Maldives was like another India because everyone was flying to India.
And why was that?
Maldives.
Because of the restrictions were less onerous than
Yes,
other countries?
exactly. There was no, the visa regulations were relatively, softer for Indians, and tickets weren't an issue because all the domestic carriers like Indigo, etc., are flying to Maldives now. So connectivity wise, visa regulation wise, everything was favorable. So yeah, you're talking about honeymoon, but we like to add to it, it's the baby moon as well. So people have actually started traveling for baby moons to international destinations. So
Which was a term
again,
that didn't exist in India probably 5 years ago, 7 years ago.
exactly. So yeah, it is true that we do get influenced by the Western culture, right? So baby mooning and honeymooning used to be a thing there, but now it's becoming a thing here. And given that everything's so accessible for Indians now, is just happening, right? So that and also one very big point here is the Bollywood influence. So when you talk India,
let's talk about that. Bollywood and cricket, obviously the mix of
it
both
just goes hand in hand. Yeah,
right.
So there is so much influence of cricket and Bollywood in an average Indian's mind. So when we see Deepika Padukone going to Europe for her honeymoon or whatever, it's just aspirational. An average Indian of my age would be like, okay, let's go here. So the knowledge and the education with respect to tourism products, tourism destinations is increasing. So yeah, that's the angle I would take here.
Yeah. Has Indian visa become better in terms of access? Sorry, Indian passport become better in terms of access over the years? Obviously, it was very low in the ranking of countries that accepted without visa or even visa on arrival. Has that moved up the ranks, if you will?
So I wouldn't have the exact data with respect to ranks, but yes, as far as my knowledge goes, that's becoming easier. So, we have been reading, right, that India is replacing China with respect to being a big source market, at least for the nearby countries. So we talk Singapore, we talk Vietnam, we talk Thailand. These are almost becoming visa-free countries for India. So with respect to that, visa regulations are becoming much, much, much simpler for Indians. For that matter, US is another story. So let's not talk about the US.
Yeah, which is fascinating because before this whole, and for those people listening who don't have who may not know, the backlog in getting visas to US has been a record high, and it's comically high from India, particularly as high as like 1,000+ days. So basically, you give up and don't apply for a visa to US is what today the situation is. And but before this backlog started pre-COVID, the amount of Indian tourists and what industry calls VFR, which is visiting family and relatives or Indian students studying at universities here and their family and parents visiting here, was rising. It's certainly not as much as it happens in UK and London, but it was certainly rising. And so that has stopped. But, for instance, London for London and UK for all the historical reasons, including India and UK connection back in the days of colonial days, but also as you said, Bollywood, etc., continues to be a huge destination. UK continues to be a huge destination for rich Indians, if you will. Peden, if you want to go ahead on that.
Yeah. Just to add to Varsha's, so according to the Henley Passport Index, which came out recently last week, India is now at 85th. India now enjoys an 85th rank. Last year, it was around 87.
Okay.
Whereas, there are about, I think we have access to about 59 countries, visa-free access.
Right.
Having said that, yes.
Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead, Pete. Yeah, go ahead.
Having said that, yes, India, there are increasingly a huge number of countries that, what Varsha pointed out about film tourism. Film tourism is big, huge. If you go to Switzerland, you will see that, Switzerland had honored Yash Chopra. Yash Chopra, because he managed to make Switzerland so aspirational,
And Yash
and
Chopra is a very famous director,
a
movie
very famous director.
of Bollywood movies.
Yes, yes. And, he's managed to make Switzerland so aspirational that every honeymoon couple, it's in their bucket list, and, going there. And there is a place there where you can go and pose in the same way that Shah Rukh Khan and Kajol had posed for Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge,
So this is
which
one of
was
the famous movies, right?
popular movie in India. Yeah. So, and you have to also see the kind of subsidies that these countries provide to Indian filmmakers, and seeing that now Indian states are also providing that. Indian states have come up with a separate film tourism policy.
Interesting.
Because they want to promote film tourism within the country as well.
Right. So that becoming, again, these are the more media rich, and I use media in a sort of a broader sense. The more media rich Indian daily life becomes, the more aspirational the society becomes. Even if
Yes, Rafat, even the Indian movie award shows are now moving. Like I think Abu Dhabi is hosting the IFA this year. So you can see that, that Canada at some point had hosted the TOIFA, which is the Times of India Foreign Awards.
Right.
So, yeah.
What has Dubai figured out about Indian traveler that others haven't yet caught on to? Because clearly Dubai has been very, very good at attracting the mass of tourists that come to Dubai. Our Indians have for years come. Shopping was the start of it, and then entertainment, and they built all these other entertainment options, theme parks or ski slopes, etc. So they figured out, which interestingly, for instance, Saudi, who's now opening up to the world, hasn't yet opened it up for Indians yet. But where else are they going to get the massive tourists from? Is sort of what my point was at our Global Forum East, which happened in Dubai in December. That was my point, is that you have to open it up to Indians for you to get the massive tourists. So what has Dubai figured out that others haven't yet? Or what has London figured out, for instance, that others haven't? Because these two happen to be the big giant cities that Indians first start traveling to when they get money.
I think Rafat, Dubai and London have both figured out the two most important things that count for Indians. That's food and shopping. And that's really important for Indian travelers, and that is there in every travel agent's itinerary as well. Because Indians, of course, there might be. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about generically, but Indians. On an average Indian would not be very much interested in museums and visiting museums or doing other touristy things. They might want to go to Madame Tussauds, but they would not be so comfortable going to Windermere to see Wordsworth's cottage.
Right. So we're still at the early stage of evolution of what a tourist does when they go out into the world. So we're still early in that.
And I think a small percentage of Indians are now discovering adventure travel and adventure tourism. And that also includes, jumping off a plane or, doing whatever. Dubai has done a lot of,
stunts,
adventure tourism
stunts,
activities that they're doing. They've got something like the London Eye, they've got the Eye in Dubai. So, and Indians want to do that. I mean, if something that's less risky.
They're less risky. Varsha, go ahead. You had a point here.
Yeah. Just to add, when we talk about UK and Indians, so we are missing the one, like the major point here, which is the Indian students. So back in 2012, when I was studying in the UK, 40% of my class was Indian. So, I mean,
and this is 2012. So this is like,
this is not too far back in the past. So, I mean, this just 2012 you're talking about, and it's just increasing. Indian students give them, if you look at the college enrollments, 40 to 50% of the students are Indian studying in the UK. So that also gives a big push to tourism between the two countries.
So this happened with Australia as well, where in the 90s, when Indian students first started going to Australia,
Yes.
Indians started getting exposed to Australia. There are obviously a bunch of ups and downs that happened between India and Australia, and again, not the venue to go into it. But Australia, in terms of India's mind, first came into being with cricket, because Australian team became became very good in cricket. And then we used to see their grounds and see the scenery there. And then when students started going, then the parents started going, and then families started going.
Exactly.
Obviously, not the mass that would come to Dubai, because it's still a more expensive and more long haul destination. But certainly that came into the map of through the student population. You're saying the same has happened in probably a much bigger way in UK.
Yes. And then also it leads to that exposure part of it. So whoever goes to UK does end up traveling to Europe. So, I mean, that's how the cycle starts.
Right.
You just experience, and that just, I mean, for example, me, before I went to the UK, I didn't even know what all experience I am in for. So when you go, you just tend to get exposed to so many new experiences that, okay, you come back and educate your parents as well. And then they are encouraged to go and do an international trip. So, I mean, that's just how it works. And when you talk about Dubai, I think I have just 2 points there. One is that they have made it so India friendly with respect to basic things like food.
Right.
I mean, you have every Indian food ingredient available in Dubai right now.
Regional, yeah. Every region's food is there,
so,
right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know a lot of people who are based there now, so they have access to everything. So that's one major driver. Food is very important for Indian people. So second is the investment. Like back in the day, Dubai was extremely close to how the foreign capital was flowing in their particular country. So, but now they have made it easy for Indians to invest in real estate, for that matter. So people can actually have a house there now, which was not possible back in the day. So that
Right.
also
They just opened up recently, correct?
That also makes, I mean, obviously, if I have family staying in Dubai, I will make maybe 3 trips in a year. So things
Right.
like that also give an impetus here. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I've seen, I think this was a point you were making, Varsha, and Peden, you were making too, is the multi-country nature of the first-time travelers. So, or the travelers that are new to traveling outside the country, if they go to Europe, they're going to multiple countries because this is their, let's say, if their first international trip, and they have disposable money to go, and they want to hit Switzerland, they want to hit Austria, they want to hit this, they want to hit that, and so what I've seen, for instance, in my family, my cousins who for the first time went outside of India, when they went to Europe, they really did do multi-country trips. And I guess this is typical behavior for first or early travelers, because they want to do the bucket list check off. I did the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and this, I did all of that. And so I think that's an interesting development, that as destinations are looking to attract Indian travelers, they have to make it easy for then Indian travelers to move across borders. If you're talking about parts of Middle East or parts of Europe or parts of even parts of US or North America, obviously, you look at other parts of the world as well. So I think that's been an interesting evolution. When we talk about the Western travelers here, a more mature market, we're talking experiential travel. This is the age of experiential travel. Has that again, it's a broad question. Has that come in the domestic? Like, for instance, I'm seeing a lot of tourism rise in, for instance, Ladakh. A lot of people do. A lot of young men and maybe women, and you can correct me. I see on my friends' network of social media about doing motorcycle trips, and you could argue that's a more experiential form of travel. Has that come into India domestically, and is that now going out of India as well?
Yes, Rafat, since you mentioned Ladakh, let me also remind that, Ladakh became popular as a destination after the movie Three Idiots.
Oh, this is became very popular.
Yeah, the Indian movie, which was an adaptation of a book, and it became increasingly popular.
That was about 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, Yes, of course. And, it's very closely linked. In India, everything is very closely linked to films because, if you see a destination in a movie, then you would want to go and experience that destination. So if they show you doing something, there was this movie called Rockstar that came in around 2011. And, there they showed the protagonist going to Nizamuddin and singing songs. And after that, there was a flurry of people coming into Nizamuddin to listen to. Of course, Nizamuddin had been doing it for a really long time.
Yeah, these are
But
devotional
after
songs.
Rockstar,
These are Sufi
yeah,
devotional songs that are part of this mosque complex. Has been there for hundreds of years at this point.
yes. So then people started flooding the mosque to listen to those songs. So in India, if people see something in a film or a TV series, then people want to experience that. I
Right.
come from a place called Darjeeling, which was popular as a tourist destination because there were a lot of Bollywood movies shot there.
Yeah.
But there's this movie that came around called Barfi.
Mhm.
So after Barfi, this was around 2012, 2013. After Barfi, there is a very famous restaurant in Darjeeling called Caventer's.
Mhm.
So in Barfi, they show the actor and the actress at the Caventer's restaurant. After that time, there's a huge queue outside Caventer's almost every time there is tourist season because people want to go and have breakfast there. And, there are many magazines that have featured Caventer's as a popular breakfast joint. So that's where people draw their inspiration from. And of course, yeah, like I said, movies. And that's
Right.
how they do their experiential tours.
Right. I think I want to wrap up a little bit, but so what I'm hearing is mass media, in this case, movies, and you could argue cricket because cricket is distributed through mass media today. It still has a huge role in influencing where Indian travelers go, unlike US, where mass media is becoming less and less relevant, such that, for instance, TikTok and others have become more, the influencers on YouTube or TikTok, etc., have become more of influencers for a certain set of people, younger people, if you will. Has that come into India either domestically or internationally, where influencers, either local influencers or international influencers that for instance the Indian youth follow? TikTok was huge in India. Unfortunately, it's banned for many political reasons, but local YouTube Shorts has become giant in India as a result of it, and there's some local players too that have emerged. But talk about the role of influencers today outside of the mass media.
So yeah, I mean, social media influencers are becoming celebrities in India now. So they are becoming as big as Shah Rukh Khan. So I mean, Shah Rukh Khan
He's only the
is an
world's most
Indian actor.
popular.
Yeah,
He's only the world's most popular actor. If you tell it to people
yeah,
in the West, they don't understand it. It's like, he's only the world's most popular person.
yeah. Maybe not his level, but yeah. What I mean to say is they are becoming celebrities now. So you would literally see people, the Gen Z generation and the millennials, actually knowing who exactly these influencers are. There are award shows being hosted for these influencers. So I mean, yes, India is catching up to that, and for that matter, there are travel shows which have picked up. I was just checking that Make My Trip has a separate section called Activities, which gives you options to explore glamping, trekking, walking tours, which was again like not a thing which Indians used to do, but now it's becoming a norm. So yeah, I mean, with respect to social media influencers, to address your question, yes, I mean, on my Instagram account, I would say 30% of them, like people who I follow, are social media influencers.
Right.
So yeah.
What are the? Let me actually close with this. What are the international brands, travel brands that we write about as Skift that are serious about India today? Obviously, you would assume hospitality has the largest number of international players that are expanding into India. And then once they get exposed to the brand in India, the chances are they will use the same brand when they travel abroad to other countries as well. From your perspective, Peden, if you want to give a quick overview, since you cover a lot of these international brands.
Yes, Rafat, I see increasingly booking Agoda coming in. Of course, Indian market is currently dominated by the domestic players like Make My Trip, Ease My Trip, Yatra, Clear Trip.
These are
But
the
I
online
also
travel
see,
agencies, correct?
yes, yes. But I also see increasingly Booking.com and Agoda trying to come into the Indian market, and they are engaging more with the Indian travel trade as well and with the consumers. So I see that, very, I mean, like, maybe they will not compete with the Make My Trip right now. But yes, and in India, customer loyalties are based on how cheap they get. It's a
Right.
very
Price is
price
still, yeah, right.
sensitive market. So depending on how they do it, like Ease My Trip started this, it came from nowhere in 2011, and it started a no convenience fee model.
Right.
And right now they claim to be the second largest OTA in India, online travel agency in India.
Right, right. And in terms of the hotel players or airline players, global things that we cover, who do you think is? I guess Accor is there, Marriott is there, all the big.
Accor, Marriott, yeah, IHG, Accor, Marriott, Hilton, they're all there. Hilton not so big, but yes, Accor and Marriott are really big and even Radisson. They are really
Radisson,
big in
right,
India. Yeah.
right, right,
And of course, internationally, yes, the Middle Eastern carriers would be great because of the great connectivity that they provide to every other country in the world. But
even
yeah,
from
now,
from the smaller cities outside of Mumbai and Delhi,
so,
they go to
so,
Lucknow or all
so
these other tier 2
yeah,
cities.
yes, but now with the whole Air India consolidation and the kind of routes that Air India has, I'm hopeful that it's going to change, and because Air India provides direct connectivity, which is very important for many people, right? Because the Middle Eastern carriers are still taking you through via something.
Right, which is what Varsha was saying. And so, Varsha, you want to do full circle and talk about some of the international investment in India, and then we'll end it there.
Yes. So with respect to airlines, I would obviously want to mention that this entire conglomerate, which is going to be made in India, which is Air India, Vistara, as I mentioned, Air Asia and Air India Express, there are talks that Singapore Airlines will be holding a 25% to 30% stake in it. So, I
Right.
mean, that's a huge thing. We get the SQ quality in the biggest airline conglomerate in India.
Well, it can only go up from wherever it is now. So that's the good news.
Exactly. So, I mean, just having that Singapore Airlines touch is good enough, which we already saw how Vistara just groomed under
Right.
the Singapore Airlines influence. So, I mean, that is the biggest example which comes to mind when we're talking about international brands investing in India in the travel supplier uh, industry. So, yeah, I mean,
Ecosystem.
that's that. And Jet is coming back, which again has a big international influence. So,
Right.
yeah, that's going to make a lot of difference because it has the landing and parking slots it has around the world is at par with what Air India has. So again, connectivity will be boosted undoubtedly. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. This has been a hugely fascinating discussion, and where it connects with Skift is that we are not only do we now have 3-4 employees today in India, but we're hiring more, and in terms of covering the Indian travel market, both domestic as well as outbound, is hugely important for us as a company. We are looking to start. We're going to start a daily newsletter. We'll start with a weekly, but move up to daily newsletter and coverage of the Indian travel ecosystem. So that for us is important. And we're very serious about bringing a conference. I guess this is breaking news, but I'm putting it at the end of the podcast. So at some point we'll announce it on Skift when we have more details. But we're very serious about bringing a Skift conference to India in 2024. So we're still early in terms of planning for that. So stay tuned to Skift, and whatever the importance of Indian travelers are globally as well as domestically, Skift will be the first place you will read it, in-depth coverage on, both on the editorial side as well as on the research side, as well as through conferences and events and mega trends, etc. So thank you again. Thank you, Varsha. Thank you, Peden. And we'll hopefully talk about this again.
Thanks, Rafat. Thank you.
This has been the Skift Podcast. Thank you for listening.